What makes you think you deserve it?
When you've been working since you were 13, promise mom by everything. Burn so often, fire talking, scars so dark they steal your dreams. Nightmares to the young and clean. Life will rain for some it seems. Pray for days when heaven stays, but you ain't put no work in for the crown. You ain't put no work in for the crown.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 12 of the Unplugging podcast. It's time to get in shape, and we're going to be talking about fitness this week. What are we going to be talking about, Leo?
Fitness this week, guys. Oh my goodness. So we have a really good shakeup this time. So now, kind of just talking about the shakeup that we have going on here, okay? So as we mentioned, even in the very first, not even episode, but just kind of an intro that we made for the podcast, we do want to talk about other things that's also besides the point of relationships, even though mainly the purpose of the unplugging was a little bit more towards the side of how we need to start being in relationships, the science, the statistics, and how we can just start approaching it better from both sides. But the shakeup is definitely going to be good on this one because working out, still, we talked about in the past on how both men and women still, even when they get in relationships, you guys have to keep up with yourselves, okay? The fact of the matter is, if we're living in a perfect world, a perfect society, okay, and if you ask any man, any woman, no matter what, whether they're out of shape, whether they're in shape, whether they're average, maybe they're a little tall, a little slim, a little bulky, whatever, they're always in their minds. I guarantee you, they're going to say, well, a man's going to say, I want a thin woman, a thin, average size woman, not big, and the woman's going to say the same thing. That they want a muscular chick, muscular man, broad shoulders, V torso. Men are gonna go off and say, I want a woman who has like a Pepsi Cola bottle. Like they want so much out of that. But of course, the problem with that is, I'm just gonna say it straight up for you guys, just to really kick us off here. Men and women, both sexes, we do build a little bit of delusionality from that. We definitely do. There are definitely guys out there who are out of shape, but still think they can pull a super thin, attractive Coca-Cola bottle woman. Which I do agree that there are some who can, if there are things behind them that attract the woman in the first place. Because remember, you got to understand, arousal and attraction are two different things. So the woman might find certain things attractive about the guy, like we talked about before. He has money, he has status, he has real estate, he has networking connections, and she sees a future because she sees security. That's attraction. But arousal is now a totally different thing. Maybe she's not even aroused by the guy because he's out of shape. Her blood pressure isn't going up. Her hormones are kicking in. Her estrogen isn't kicking up. She doesn't feel like this urge to throw herself on him because she finds him super sexy, things like that, physically at least. That all has to come into play at some point. Because the point is, you're trying to not compartmentalize. Both sexes shouldn't have to do that at certain points. So I think with this episode, we're definitely going to get into a little bit more about that and such. With women, the same exact thing. There are definitely going to be some women. And the thing is, women can definitely be more delusional about this. Why? Because even we looked at some Tinder studies, or just one, I would say, where a woman who's out of shape, she has probably equal pull than a celebrity male when it comes to pulling the opposite sex, which I think is mind-boggling to me, to be honest with you. Totally mind-boggling. So you can see the dynamics there are totally different. And just to show you guys kind of where we're coming from, let's pull up our first study here. I don't want to get into too many studies with this episode, to be honest with you. When we get onto the actual workout portion, I'm not going to pull up any studies simply because I want this to be more generalized, a little bit more generalized, and go off some theories, go off maybe some science that I already know without actually showing the papers and things like that. At least not for now, okay? Because I don't want to bore you guys with all that science. This is a new topic for us, so I definitely want us to kind of kick off really strong on this one. So the first study we can kind of pull up here, we can look at women prefer V-shaped torsos, broad shoulders relative to the hips, right? Now, we've briefly talked about this, Chris, actually, in one of our previous episodes, if you can kind of remember that.
Oh, shit.
This actually might have been on our last episode, if I can remember correctly. Yeah, that was on our last episode when we were talking about female mating preferences.
Hold on a second.
Yes, we can get some of the stuff going on here. Relatively short study here from what we're about to show you guys. These are one of the more watered down studies. I wish I can show you guys like graphs and things like that, but we'll show you, of course, like the abstract, and of course you guys have the autonomy to look at all this stuff on your own time.
1 second. Some stuff going wrong here. Whoopsie.
Technical difficulties, guys. Bear with us.
But yeah.
Bear with us a moment here.
Paste. Damn, what the fuck is going on here? Wow, it's not showing. Well, we can do it without Leo, maybe, but let me see. Properties.
Almost there, guys. Almost there.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so kind of just going off here. We'll keep on going. So just from the study we're about to show you guys, I believe we showed you guys this already, but just to kind of give you a refresher, women idealistically, for the majority, okay, they want males with a shoulder to waist ratio of about 1.62 ideally. Okay, so we're talking broad shoulders, okay, because it shows formidability.
Right.
It shows
nothing to do without you in the picture, but
okay, that's fine, no worries. So a little technical difficulty, guys. We apologize for that one. So if we kind of just look here, just as a simple highlight, all right. And just briefly going off here, males with higher SHR, shoulder to hip ratio, and females with low waist to hip ratios reported sexual intercourse at an earlier age. They had more sexual partners and more extrapair copulations, and having engaged in more instances of intercourse with people who were involved in another relationship. Can you believe that? like the guys and the girls who have more idealistic bodies, they're the ones who have a higher rate of causing, I guess, infidelity with other relationships. Can you believe that? That's kind of insane. If you come down a little bit more, you're going to see on the right side right here, and I have it marked on here for you guys, okay? This is an undergraduate study here, 56 females, 60 males, and they have different age ranges. They're about 20 years old. And we can see on the side here, 1.62 shoulder to hip ratio is an ideal ratio for men regarding female attraction. Okay. Now, is this the end all be all? It's not. It's not the end all be all. What if it's 1.63, 64, or 60, 1.60, 1.61? All right, fine. The idea here, okay, just so everyone doesn't drown themselves with the numbers here, is women want broad shoulders. That is an attraction point for us, for men, okay? And there's nothing else here, but we have another study here as well, where it's some of the studies you're going to see, many of them have to do with visual fixations. So the next one we can kind of go here is the mesomorphic study that we have here. I don't think we went through this one, actually.
No.
We're going to kind of breeze through these studies here, guys, because I don't want this to be about really relationships too much today, but we're just going off again. I'm using this as preference so you guys understand that one, yeah. So I'm doing this just so you guys can understand, like, the fact of the matter is you guys have to understand what the opposite sex wants, okay? Like, if you don't even want to take the time to understand what the opposite sex wants, what are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? Like, you're going to be here in the marketplace basically fighting with everybody else, like, okay, well, this person meets my standards, but then when you finally meet a person who actually meets your standards, what are you going to do when you don't meet their standards? That's an important question you're going to have to battle and ask yourself when the time comes. And I say when because this happens with everybody. It literally does. So looking at this one here, masculine somatotypes, and I can't even pronounce that word, hirsutenus, I've never heard of that word, as determinants of sexual attractiveness to women. So 2003 study. So looking at here, right, so just kind of going off the quick highlights here, this one is compartmentalized of different studies. It's 5 total studies, I believe. But just looking at the highlights, you can see here in study 1, back post figures of mesomorphic, meaning more muscular, some somatotypes were rated as the most attractive, followed by average, ectomorphic, which is more the slimmer types, and then endomorphic, which are more like the heavier built ones. Not in a good way. They're more of like the round guys. They kind of have like a little bit of a belly coming out. Their circumference is a little high and things like that. And rightfully so. And study 2, I didn't really highlight that one, but study 3, back post figures were manipulated in order to change waist to hip ratios and waist to shoulder ratios. And here it is, more data for you guys, okay? A waist hip ratio, now talking about women, 0.8 to 0.89, and a waist shoulder ratio, waist to shoulder ratio, I believe that's what it is here, right? They're changing the acronyms a little bit here. Yeah, waist to shoulder ratio, yes, well, we kept talking about that. A 0.6 were rated as most attractive, and these effects were more pronounced when modeling mesomorphic figures. And then finally, last one here, study 5 showed the presence of trunk hair had a marked positive effect on women's ratings of attractiveness for both mesomorphic and endomorphic male figures. And they're consistent. These results are consistent, and we're talking about 5 studies put into one, just completely just thrown in all together. And again, women look for physical appearance when it comes to security and protection and formidability. But men, on the other hand, look at beauty and youth for reproductive and fertility purposes. Once again, men and women are not the same. We look for different things when it comes to mating practices. Okay, understand that. We are not looking for the same things from the opposite sex. All right?
We're done with this.
We're done with this one here. Yeah, so I think we can kind of show off one last one here. Well, we'll show off when it comes to more generalized mating preferences. And just the final thing, guys, before we get on to the main thing, again, like I said, I wanted to kind of breeze through this one here a little bit. It's that one that we just downloaded, Chris. That's the mating preferences, 1989.
Sure. You gotta tell me what's the name of it again, because I don't remember.
That
Mating preferences, we went through this one.
Now, that one is going to be mate relationship preferences, 1989. There it is. You pass it. Middle. Yep. All right, guys. So last study here, and we'll kind of get on going here. Again, this is just to get you guys up to speed on like why we are talking about this topic here. All right. So we're not going to go through all this. Let's scroll down more, Chris, to where the charts are deciding on good looks here. So we're dictating. Not this one. The chart looks like this one, though. It looks like this one, except the top says...
Are we going through all the countries here?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. To show how relevant this is.
Okay.
Yeah, so keep going. Keep going here, please. Oh, wait. No, not this one. Not this one.
What country shows... I want to see this one. No,
don't spoil it! Don't spoil it!
Okay.
Oh, it's ambition. No, don't spoil this one either. No. This is for our future one. I'm telling you. This one's really good. It has a bunch of... Wait. Oh, here it is. Here it is. We can zoom out just a little bit here, if we can.
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Right. So, last and final study here, guys. And again, these are a bunch of studies compartmentalized together. The other thing I need you guys to understand here, and this is for both sexes, is that men prioritize looks more than women do.
Yeah.
Okay, we really do. So, but here's my gripe. Here's my gripe with this study. It's not the study itself. It's more just the fact that I'm reading this. And when we have conversations with women, and when women come up to us and they have this really bad notion, well, why does the guy only like me for my looks? Why doesn't he like me for my personality? Because that's the first thing that happens. Okay, men prioritize looks first. I've already stated that if men are going to approach you, they're going to look for reproductive value and fertility from the woman. It's just the way it is. It is a mating strategy. Women obviously aren't going to look for those from a man. They're not. So please, for the ladies, like, stop with this notion, okay? Like, you gotta understand that when men are looking at you, yes, beauty matters. Yes, look matters. Your youth matters. Your fertility matters. The way you look matters.
It's just how we're hardwired, you know?
Yes. Like, we're not going to approach you if we don't think you're attractive. Like, that's, to us, at least. Like, please understand that. Please understand that. So, which is why you got to take care of yourselves. And kind of right here, and I've already stated it here, looks matter more to men than for women with mate selecting, hence why beauty matters for men to make the first move. And then to show you guys even more proof, look at this. This is going off continents and countries, all this stuff. Like, look at all this. Like, we look at males and females, and look at the staggering differences with how much men put in priority when it comes to beauty and looks. Look at this. Like, we look at where it says for males, right? So look at the means, and then we look at females for mean. We have African. Okay, we've got Nigeria, South Africa, Let me see here. Zambia and Zulu.
Yeah.
Look at all this. Like, look, all the numbers are consistently high. And then where it says significant on the right side, you can see that it's marked pretty simply here. NS with asterisk means it's not significant. But when there are actual digits there is a significance. And you can see coming down here, there are barely any NS's. Barely. What do I see? Just going up peripheral. 3? 3, yes, just, oh no, 3, yeah, 3. So it's just like, that's how much it matters. And let's look at China. Look at China. So 2.6 versus 1.59. Let's look at the Eastern Europeans. 2.39, 1.95. Look at that. See, it's always men. Men are prioritizing it way more than women. Let's find us, the United States, North America.
Maybe USA.
Mainland. 211 versus 167. Men prioritize looks more than women. Like that's the best way I can say it. That is just the best way. And there's even other studies as well where men's testosterone levels increase when they see an attractive woman.
Wow.
Like there's even endocrinology put on that. Like our whole endocrine system increases in activity when we see an attractive woman.
Yeah.
Like our blood pressure goes up, our heart rate goes up, dopamine goes up, testosterone goes up, the serotonin levels go up in our bodies. Like there's so much that happens in our body when a man looks at a woman he perceives as attractive.
Right.
So again, guys, like this isn't to shame anybody or like dunk on anybody, but just understand, like you gotta understand what the opposite sex wants. It's plain and simple. Plain and simple. And
Sexual experience?
no, don't show that. No. I'm telling you, like this is all gonna be good stuff for later on. Don't worry.
We done with this?
We're done here. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to
Okay.
the show here.
All right, guys. So that pretty much wraps it up. So again, Dr. Cervantes, appreciate you joining again. Thank you. Perfect. And we have some views here. Very good. So guys, now that we've established a playing ground here, okay, on what men want when it comes to looks and what women look for when it comes to looks, okay, now we can go on to how we can get everything going with the workout plans and things like that. So knowing that, moving on to workouts, I'm going to jump straight into just even the title, guys, okay? Time to get in shape. It really is. Like, there's no better time than now to get in shape. There are way too many people right now who constantly, continuously make excuses to not work out, to not cut off certain things from their diet, to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, and for the record, like if you just understand human psychology, we're not even talking about evolutionary psychology now. I don't think you're going to hear those two words for this entire podcast episode, because that's going to be more with relationships. But if we're talking about more just generic human psychology, humans by nature, we don't like getting out of our comfort zone. We just don't. Like if the brain, it sees and feels and has this stimulus that it's leaving its comfort zone entirely, look what happens. It builds this defense where it doesn't want to move, it doesn't want to act, it doesn't want to perform an action, and it just doesn't want to do anything. It really doesn't. Like humans, unfortunately, we have a bit of a hardwiring to take the path of least resistance. We really do. So obviously, of course, that's not the case with everybody. You have to be a disciplined person. You have to understand that if you understand business, you understand life in general, you understand risk taking, you're going to understand that being in the comfort zone, the safe place, you're more concerned with taking the safe route and once again taking the path of least resistance. You don't get a lot done. You really don't get a lot done. And there's even another study, and I know I'm just kind of jumping off here with this one. There's even a study we can pull up later on, how when a man sees an attractive woman, he becomes more of a risk taker. Yeah. Why? Because he's trying to impress her. He's trying to impress her. So what do? They tend to lie a little bit more about their status. They tend to, make moves on them, make bold moves, fake confidence, things like that. It's going to happen, okay? But coming back onto the workouts, you guys got to understand, like, there's no way, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast, this episode, idealistically, there's obviously men and women aren't going to flat out just say, oh, well, I wouldn't mind having like a super in shape girl and she's slim, this and that. I wouldn't mind a guy who's like broad shoulders. No, like you gotta understand that when people say that, it's because they're trying to be a little bit more within their range, okay? Obviously, if we have a woman who perceives herself as a 10, even though we have a lot of women, degeneracy.
All women think they're 10s.
We have a lot of degeneracy already off rip, where there are many women out there that think they're 10s when they're really probably 5s and 4s and 6s, things like that. We've already exacerbated female delusion to that extent.
Right.
But let's say she's already a high number, and she's young, and she's fertile, beautiful. She can pull. She can pull those types of guys. But if we're talking about a woman who's in her 30s, in her 40s, she isn't as youthful, her fertility is bad, she has a lot of baggage, she has father issues, she doesn't understand male authority, she has a lot going on. She has a lot going on. She doesn't have that same negotiation power to pull a guy with broad shoulders, V torso. Maybe he's famous, or maybe he has some money, status, networking. He has pull with other women, things like that. And we've already shown some studies on how men are more attractive when they're around other women, things like that. Especially if they're hotter than the girl who's watching them. Those are the types of the guys the girls are not going to be able to get with at all. Now, what girls are mostly going to tell us, which I think is a bit of a headache for me just thinking about it, when they're conflating just being able to physically attract a guy who they find physically attractive, but being able to keep the guy. There's a difference here, guys. So we're going to hear that a lot, where women say, oh, well, I was able to get with this guy yesterday, that guy yesterday. What does that mean? Yeah, it just means that he just wanted you for intimacy. Yeah. That's it. Like, he's not going to commit to you. He's not going to put a ring on you. He's not going to do any of that.
They think they're high value because they slept with a guy who has a yacht or something, and then
oh yeah,
they think they can pull millionaires here and there, and it gets to their head really easy.
And that's where a lot of the exacerbation comes in with delusion, because they know they can pull certain types of men, but the delusion comes in when they think they can keep the guy. Mm-hmm. That's where the delusion really comes in.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, coming onto the male side, it's the same thing. We'll have males who, in their minds, and I've seen this before, where some guys are just really out of shape, and I'm telling myself, like, okay, like, there's no way you're gonna pull the girl you really want. You might still be able to pull a girl, but you're not gonna pull the girl that you want. You're not gonna pull a Coca-Cola glass bottle woman. You're not gonna pull a woman who's peaking in her fertility. You're not gonna pull a woman who's like maybe 5'8". That was the measurement. No, 5'6". It was like 5'6" that we pulled up in the study. That was more of like an average desirable height for women. Long legs, beautiful hair, beautiful skin. Like, if you touch, it's very smooth. You can see that she has clear eyes. You can see that she has a very feminine voice, a very feminine musculature with her head and her face and things like that. You're not going to be able to pull girls like that unless you have a lot going on for you. Like, you got a lot of money, you have status. Like, there's a lot of ways to still pull girls like that. But if you're an average guy, which we have obviously a lot of, like 10%, 5-10% of the top tier guys, they're the ones controlling the market. But the rest of the 90% to 80%, these are the guys that potentially they might still be delusional, but these are the guys that still in their mind saying, oh, I can pull any girl I want. Some of them, not all of them. But they never get those type of girls. Never. Never. And if they do, it's not long term. It's not long term. They're only going to get the ones who are kind of stuck with their hypergamy, meaning that they've had to shift it around. So they don't have negotiation power. So these are the types of guys who are pulling girls who are in their 30s, in their 40s, fertility's low, they're not as beautiful, they're not as youthful, they have baggage, they're probably ran through, they have a lot of issues, they probably traveled a lot too, so they're very experienced, they've had a lot of one-night stands, like, they have no choice but to settle for any guy, not the guy. So I think men in that realm need to understand that, because their delusion is, oh, I found a girl, oh my goodness, she likes me for this and that. But it's like, she's only settling for you.
Right.
You gotta understand that women settle when they have to settle. When they have to settle.
And sometimes they don't even settle. They just stay single, they get some cats, dogs, and then they're in their 40s and 50s, and, you know, just live alone, and a shitty life, really.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a sad life.
So, putting more ground on that, guys, again, it's time to get in shape. For those who are still kind of wondering, okay, well, what do I do here? Okay, how do I don't know what to do. I don't know how to go to the gym. I don't know how to do cardio. What do I eat? Like, there's 10,000 questions. I get it. I get that there's a plethora questions. It's at this point where it's just so ubiquitous. You're just going to be like, okay, well, there's so many unanswered things here. Like, I just don't know how to get started. My simple answer to you, okay, just go to the gym. Just go to the gym. Just lift. So you don't have to know any science. You don't have to know biology. You don't have to know endocrinology or testosterone levels or the well, testosterone probably, because if your doctor tells you they have low testosterone levels, then he's probably going to prescribe to you, you know.
Right. But if you go to the gym, it's going to go up. You know what I'm saying? If you start doing some weight resistance, some calisthenics or something, it's going to go up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's going to go up. Or you might have to go on, you know, testosterone replacement therapy, TRT.
It'll naturally go up, you know.
Yeah, it'll go up. It just really depends on, I guess, the discrepancies on how they are built wise.
Yeah, diet is a factor too. There's so many factors in here.
Oh yeah, and again, we're gonna try to cover as much as we possibly can, guys, because again, I want this to be more generalized. So when you guys are at the gym, all right, I get that it's probably a little intimidating when you're seeing a bunch of people who are probably they're in shape already. They have it. They got it together. Most of them have it figured out. Most of them maybe don't have it totally figured out and they're just experimenting on certain things. And some people still don't get it. They probably still don't get it. You still see some guys who are still trying to get it together. You still see some women who are trying to get it together. But you gotta understand, in order for you to kind of get it to a certain degree, you have to put yourself in the fire. Throw yourself in the fire, throw yourself at the heat of the moment, and then your body, your brain will get out of this comfort zone. It has to. You have to discipline your body, your response system, your brain to just be like, okay, I'm not at home anymore. I'm not eating junk back at home right now. I'm not sitting at home playing video games all day. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing drugs all day. Blah, blah, blah. I'm here now. I'm outside of my comfort zone. And that's okay. Because all these people, like think of it like this. I guarantee you guys, like, if people like LeBron James, Elon Musk, Michael Jordan, Bill Gates, all these big name people, do you honestly think that they sat around all day being in their comfort zone and then they became successful people? They didn't. I get that not all of them are like into the gym. I know Elon Musk is.
I thought you were gonna say the gym. I was ready to say Bill Gates is not.
Yeah, I know. I knew that was coming, but it's like the point I'm trying to make here is you gotta understand, like, in order for you to be successful, you gotta do things that are well outside of your comfort zone, and you're gonna also have to digest the fact that you're probably gonna have to do some things you don't want to do either. Yeah, one of them is probably get up really early, really early. If you have like a super late job, or you have to get into work kind of early and you don't get off work until like late at night, and then you're tired and you can't do anything. Another one also is you're gonna have to cut off time away from other hobbies, like playing video games or spending time with your girlfriend or boyfriend, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Or going out clubbing. I would get rid of that any day, honestly. There's no good that comes out of that anyway. So that you guys got to also understand, like, you got to be able to cut off certain things that just are no good for you. All right, like the clubbing and the drinking and the drugs, all that stuff. Like that stuff, just like, what does that do for you? Nothing, absolutely nothing. And we'll definitely get onto like drinking and things like that, because that already increases estrogen levels in male bodies. And there's even a study, we don't have that right now, actually. I saw it not so long ago, but we'll upload that at some point, that when you look at estradiol levels in the body, how it's responsible for also increasing estrogen levels, it also increases, I believe, visceral fat in the body. So that's the fat that's like surrounding your organs, and then you have like the whole abdominal fat, right?
Yeah, visceral fat is the harder fat to get rid of, right?
That's the fat that's more internal. That's like surrounding your guts, your stomach, and all that stuff. But then you have the subcutaneous fat. That's more like the first layer. It's outside and things like that, right? So the visceral fat, yeah. There's even some studies about how married people, like, they increase in visceral fat.
They get lazy, you know. Once they're married, everybody gets lazy, and
oh yes.
Even in relationships too, man. Sometimes they get too comfortable. They're like, I'm gonna stop going to the gym, start eating out all the time.
Yeah, and we've already brought this up, actually, where the moment I think this was the that video where we were talking about red flags for girls. We were talking about that one, how I can't remember, but it has something to do with, don't get lazy when you go into a relationship. When you get into a relationship, don't stop working on yourselves.
Right.
Because I tend to see that a lot. I tend to see that when people get into relationships, they just completely stop everything that they were doing prior to getting into a relationship. So at that point, instead of working out, they're just kind of placating. They're placating their mate. They're placating bad behaviors. I was like, okay, well, don't go to the gym. Spend more time with me. But it's like, okay, look, if you don't want to go to the gym, to me, that's already a red flag because I'm not going to stay in shape and you're not going to stay in shape. Because we showed a study some episodes ago where a woman's waist to hip ratio determines her fertility ability. So if she's out of shape in her youth, guess what happens? It negatively, adversely affects her fertility. So not only that, but it increases blood pressure, increases her chances of diabetes, heart rate goes up, everything just it's a dysfunction. It's a total dysfunction from that point on. So if men have this knowledge, and of course women too, obviously, right? Because we just talked about estradiol levels in the body and then the visceral fat going up because of all that. So that's important for both sexes to understand, right? So I get it. I totally get when it comes to like the bad habits. You got to be able to get rid of those. So kind of going back into the gym, okay? Now, I do want to talk a little bit about kind of program design a little bit, and maybe we can get into a topic about nutrition as well, because I think that's going to be very, very important. And of course, no science, no history, no anything like that, kind of like how we usually do with our relationship topics, things like that. I want this to be a little bit more generalized, just so everybody knows, okay? I do want to point out the fact for whoever watches this, I am a certified sports nutritionist by the International Society of Sports Nutrition, or ISSN. I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist under the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I've been a coach for well over 10 years, sports nutritionist for almost 10 years as well. So it's been a pleasure. I've worked with some athletes too, professional athletes. I work with a lot of college guys as well here and there. I do personal training on the side. I mainly do a lot of sports nutrition with some of the pro guys who we work with back at my job and things like that. So it's a pleasure. It's a lot of fun. That was my first passion. It still is, but becoming more competent and just becoming more diverse in just the topics, the hard topics in the world. Those are things that I kind of want to strive myself on. So now that you guys have a little bit more of a background on that as well, just understand, if we're talking a little bit more outside of sports performance, which we'll have a video later on about that, if we're talking more general, which is what we're talking about right now, lift weights, guys, okay? In any workout plan, whether it's losing weight, gaining muscle, preserving lean body mass, the two catalytic factors that are always going to play a role in this, no matter what, okay, that is going to be incumbent of you to really stick on, okay, is training, meaning that you have to stretch your body out. The muscles have to feel lengthening and shortening and force production to actually feel any sort of stress. There has to be time under tension. There has to be certain types of loads that have to be on there in order for adaptations to go through. And the volume, okay, the resting periods, how much water you're drinking, how you're hydrating yourself, the amino acids that you're putting in your body, how you're pre-fueling. There's a lot of things. There's definitely a lot of things. But the two things I want you guys to worry about is there has to be resistance training and there has to be a component of diets, okay? Now, the diet itself, I wasn't going to talk about this until a little bit later on today, but just understand, diet, I think, it's a bit of a scary word for some people, because a diet, by definition, if you want to call it that, like, you're taking away things from your diet, which is what people don't want, okay? Yeah. And on top of that, you're trying to go...
It can be not fun, you know?
You're going into a caloric deficit. Yeah. Okay, this is mostly for like weight loss, but first talking about like strength and conditioning, lift weights, guys. Start off, of course, not worrying so much about if you're not injured. Okay, first off, make sure that you're clear to do these things. You lift. There are three main lifts. Okay, that's the bench press, the deadlift, and the squat. Those are like the big three. Maybe the row, maybe if you want to call it like the big four here and there. Like
the biggest muscle that you're working on?
The compound lifts. Yeah. So the compound, by definition, is you're working more than one muscle.
Oh, okay.
At one time. You're probably still counting the synergistic muscle groups, but if we're talking about the compound list, it's working a multitude of muscles at once.
Right.
Plus the synergistic muscle groups and antagonistic and agonistic muscle groups. Because the agonistic muscle groups are going to be more for kind of balancing out the prime movers to make sure that the lift is good. We can get into all that terminology maybe later on. So if it's an upper body day, guys, do some sort of a bench press, you know. You can either do like a 1RM, even though I don't recommend doing a 1RM, like the first timers. You want to see kind of where you're at first before you do anything else. Go for more endurance. Go for more muscular endurance. So muscular endurance is going to be more towards how much, of course, the muscle can endure within a period of time and how much volume it can take of stress. And that's the one that's going to require one of the least amount of resting periods, okay? So I would start off by maybe 12 to 15 reps. And usually it's about 60%, 60 to 67% of whatever your predicted 1RM is. 1 RM meaning 1 rep max, okay, for those who are learning this type of terminology right now. Do that. Maybe do like 4 or 5 sets, somewhere around there. Do a few warm-up sets. A warm-up should be about maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, somewhere around there. If you're going to do a warm-up, we probably should start off with this, right? The warm-up. The warm-up. So the warm-up, okay, of course you come on and you do the warm-up. And if you're going to do a warm-up, the warm-up should be agonistic towards the movements you're going to produce. So if your plan is to do a bench press, you can do probably a few push-ups. Maybe you can do banded pressing, something to at least get the muscle to activate. So you're getting the pectoralis major, the medialis, the minor to activate a little bit. Plus you're getting the secondary muscle groups, the prime movers of the triceps, the tricep head. And then you're getting some of the antagonistic muscle groups, the bicep brachii, to kind of balance out, making sure that the movement is going in one direction. Okay, that's the kind of the purpose of it. Another one you can do is maybe getting the triceps to warm up a little bit. Maybe you can get like a little plate and then just kind of go with some standing skull crusher somewhere around there. Maybe single arm overhead extensions. A little bit more with shoulder mobility. Definitely get shoulder mobility going. One thing I like to do is like get maybe like 2.5 or 5 pounds and do some knee raises. You want to make sure your scapula, okay, you retract them, so making sure your shoulders are back. Coming back, hold for about maybe a second, and then come on down. A simple tempo of 1-1-1, meaning once it goes eccentric, isometric, and concentric. So we can start here. Okay, we're holding. The 1 would be coming downwards. Okay, the deceleration of the movement. Then the last one from the 1-1-1 that I mentioned, if you guys don't understand, you can always rewind and see what I mean by that. But the first one is the eccentric portion. The second one is isometric, which means holding. And the last number is the concentric, meaning that you're actually putting effort in the movement, where the first one is that you're decelerating and you're kind of relaxing a little bit from the movement. So again here, I'm going to start here. The first one is the deceleration movement, or the eccentric portion, meaning that you're lengthening the muscle within the movement coming down. And then the last number, concentric, you're putting effort. And then the middle one is going to be the hold, okay? Isometrics are going to be important because the one thing I've learned in my strength and conditioning career is you have to put in isometrics. The holds will discipline the muscle to be able to control actions better, okay? So if you have someone who's doing a bench press and they're kind of like all wobbly and like you're pressing, but you're looking kind of like this, like they're all over the place, you definitely don't want to look like that. There's so much inconsistency with the lift, you definitely don't want that. What you're going to want to kind of fix that is, if you're going with the benching, I'm going to jump ahead of the gun here with correcting this type of stuff. Right. If we see the arms are going up, like let's say if you're coming upwards and you're almost past the sticking point, which means the point that the lift is most likely going to fail, and you're kind of more than halfway through and you're kind of like bobbing a little bit, you're going upwards, there's weakness in the lats, okay, and there's weakness in the shoulders. So I would do some corrective exercises, meaning that you can superset from the bench press and do a corrective exercise, where you can get a band, lay on a bench, grab on, pull it towards the vertex of your chest, and hold this position, so that way you're activating or reactivating the latissimus dorsi muscle group. So now when you press, you're not all wobbly. The body just kind of remembers that it has the latissimus dorsi muscle group. Okay, so that's kind of the point when it comes to that. It's muscle activation techniques. So you're activating or you're reactivating certain muscle groups, or those neglected intrinsic muscle groups, to hold and stabilize your movements better. Okay, so that's how you can kind of plan around already. So the warm up, again, you want the warm-up to pretty much be synergistic towards the movements you're going to be doing. So I've already mentioned a few for the chest. Another one you can do, like I was mentioning before, if you want to do shoulder work, another one is to work on scapular elevation, a shrug, or you can do the plates like I mentioned, do like a T-raise, shrug. So now you have a little bit of elevation, okay, elevation of the scapula, and you're elevating it even more with the shrug, and then you're de-elevating it, okay, depression is what it's really called, depression, scapular depression, and then come on back down, and then just repeat that. Same thing, and also including isometric, so you're teaching your body how to control everything, all right? That's another way. If you're doing biceps, which in most cases, they're going to be, with the pressing, they're going to be the antagonistic muscle groups, just the ones that are kind of counterbalancing everything, okay? If you're doing pull-ups, same thing. You can get some bands and then just go for some pull downs, maybe kneeling, so you're changing the stimulus, so now you're balancing your core a little bit, and then warming up the lats, and you're warming up a little bit of the deltoids, you're warming up a little bit of the biceps, major terespinal muscle groups, the rhomboids. There's a lot going on there. Now, when you get those 10 minutes about within your warm-up, and generally with the warm-up, again, I want to emphasize this. The goal is not to do the warm-up and then you feel fatigued. That's not the point of a warm-up. The warm-up, idealistically, by definition, the warm-up is, if we want to use the term warm-up, it's mostly just tissue temperature elevation. That's all it is, tissue temperature elevation. But after that, you're trying to get your body to understand that with a certain type of load, it's going through concentric, isometric, and eccentric motions, okay? So now it recognizes the movements when it's progressing itself, or you're progressing the body. So when you're benching, rowing, squatting, you're naturally progressively overloading the body. So when you're getting the lifts going, certain muscle groups are activated and you're not compensating. Compensating is a big thing.
What about stretching for warm-up?
Don't do static stretching.
Don't do static?
Yeah, because and that's a good question from Chris, actually. So what I'll see some guys do in the gym, even women, it's anybody, it doesn't matter. What I'll usually see some people do is they'll go for static passive stretching when they're doing their warm-ups. Why do I say don't do that? It's because it desensitizes the dendrites within the neuron, within the muscle, okay, within the body. What that means, if we're going to say it in English, okay, is... Yeah, you guys weren't expecting all this, huh? So what that means is you're not warming up and you're not training the body's central nervous system wise to produce adequate amounts of force and absorb adequate amounts of force, as well as holding it. So in essence, like let's say you're running and you want to be fast and explosive. You holding like your leg up, okay? Oh, yeah, that was good. Holding your leg up and such. Holding it in that position, yes, it lengthens the hamstring. Yes, it lengthens the glutes and then your lower back and your gastroc, your calf muscles. But it doesn't get the body to be responsive to load and responsive to fast, quick reproductive movements. That's why. So if I were to do like the same movement, I'm not gonna do that again, but if I were to do a leg raise, like doing just, like pretend it's my leg, so I'm doing like an active leg raise, but maybe I have a band around my ankle, okay? So I'm doing, maybe it's better if I just do this, right? So I'm gonna have this here, and then you can see I can go for, let's say a band is wrapped up on my ankle here, and then I'm coming upwards, and I'm holding this position, and then I come down. So it's a 1-1 tempo. So 1 coming up, 1 to hold, and 1 coming down. Okay, so 1 second up, 1 second pause, 1 second down. So what's happening now is with this leg, I'm getting the sartorius muscle group to function, activate, understand that, okay, I'm going to be performing this movement probably in the future with a squat or anything. And then I also have my toes up. So it's igniting the gastroc and the soleus muscle groups even more. So it's driving my hip flexors to work more. And then when I come on down, my balancing leg, it's working as a stabilizer, but also my glute is activating. So it's activating while my right leg is coming up, okay? So it's acting as a stabilizer, but also I'm producing a force with my quad and my glute to balance myself and to keep myself locked in. So you have a bunch of things going on with just that one movement. We're talking more about contralateral work here. It's kind of bilateral actually, but in essence, if we're just talking about that movement, it's more contralateral, but because the other leg is getting worked out because of the balance, it's more bilateral, I would say. So that would be another way you can do that. So I just went into excruciating detail about that one, so that's good. So understanding how the body works, guys, is going to be extremely important. And Chris, you asked me that question. Good question. Thank you for that one. We talked about compensations. Do not get to the point where your body compensates. Do not. It's not good, because what happens is that if you have a muscle, and we talked about muscle activation technique, if we have, maybe you could say the upper trapezius isn't activating properly, I'll tell you what happens most of the time when your upper trapezius isn't working very well, and it's not pretty. What usually happens is your upper back, depending on the side, so let's say my right side, your upper back in around the scapular area, so the teres major, teres minor muscle groups, and connecting a little bit towards maybe the origin point of the latissimus dorsi muscle, where the muscle is originating from on the bone. That's going to start working a little bit more than it should. It might even push out your rib cage to a certain degree, especially if you're sitting a lot. And then it also affects in a chain your tricep and your forearm. All right, and it affects it negatively. It's gonna. It might be. You might feel like this sort of sharp pain on both the forearm and the brachioradialis muscle group, and then the tricep head on the tendon, especially. Those aren't good places to be, because it negatively affects your performance, of course. If you feel that something is compensating, of course, find the source of it, and then maybe get some therapy, get some kneeling done. Maybe you might have to do some muscle activation technique, change your posture when you sit, things like that, so that way you can kind of relieve and deprive yourself more off that. So you definitely want to get to that. But back to the workouts. So now you have a little bit about that. So when we're talking about like those main compound lifts, we're talking more about, of course, multitudes of muscles being worked out. Now that you're done with that, you're probably going to wonder, okay, so what's next after this, right? What's next after that is you guys want to work on secondary muscle groups in which help you improve on those compound lifts. You can call them auxiliary lifts, special lifts, secondary lifts. There's a lot of terminology that kind of goes off there, but you can name it whatever you want, honestly. The goal when it comes to resistance training, of course, if you're talking more in general, is, and this is also in athletic performance as well, is you want to be sure that you're focusing on those secondary muscle groups, those muscles that are helping you as synergistic muscle groups and antagonistic muscle groups, to improve those, so that way your compound lifts improve. Hence, if I'm doing my bench press, and let's say because you just figured something was off, and I just gave you guys that example, that if you're doing the bench press and you're kind of wobbling up here, I told you that's a potential shoulder and latissimus dorsi weakness, or serratus anterior weakness, okay? Now that you just figured out what your weak points are with your lifts, guess what? Now you can develop your special exercises after that. So block training, we can call it, it's called block training for the most part. You have one block, well, two blocks. We mentioned the first block, which is going to be more of the warm-up, and block number 2 is the core lifts, the compound lifts. So you mentioned the bench press and the deadlift and the squats with like a corrective exercise. And it doesn't even have to be a corrective exercise. It could be maybe another compound exercise. If you want to do upper body, you could do a bench press, you could do a row after that. You know, it's within your threshold. Always train within your threshold, but you want to try to push that threshold as well, and then recover well, make sure your body can handle more overload progressing with a recovery. And we'll try to get into more detail with the recovery aspect as well soon, hopefully tonight. So now let's say again I have my lat, my serratus anterior, my back, my tricep, whatever, and maybe there's some core weakness. Maybe I'm like wobbling in my core, whatever it is, right? And I have to hit those small intrinsic muscle groups surrounding the spine to make sure I'm more balanced when I'm walking, when I'm on my back, pressing or rowing. So now here's how you do it. So latissimus dorsi, okay? What can I do? I can do lat pull downs. I can do banded pull downs. I can do pullovers. Pullovers is basically when you're on a bench, like at least half of your body, half of your upper torso is on the bench. You get a dumbbell or a barbell, and you're on the bench, okay? And you have the barbell or dumbbell here, and you're bringing it kind of towards you, the chest area, kind of like how I showed with the band. That's going to strengthen your lats, okay? And then the triceps are going to be kind of be synergistic to this as well, but they're also going to be worked on as well. Another one here, we talked about maybe some serratus anterior exercises. I'll show you the one exercise where you could do with that one actually, but I want to get more on like the main ones. So we did the lats. If you have a weak back, I would double down on back. As a matter of fact, I would do in the same block. I would do like a pull down and a row. It's vice versa. You could either do row, you could do a pull down afterwards, or you could do vice versa after that in reverse. And then always do shoulder work. Gentlemen, this goes back to the study that we were talking about, the broad shoulders. You want to know how you can get broad shoulders? I'm going to tell you how you can get broad shoulders by doing dumbbell shoulder series. If all else fails, the dumbbell shoulder series are going to save you from not getting the broad shoulder. So what does that look like, right? So the shoulder series, we're talking about more shoulder flexion, more shoulder lateral flexion, okay, or abduction. And then we have horizontal abduction, okay? So the horizontal abduction, okay, it's gonna be when you're more bent over. So it's like you're bent over 90 degrees from the hip to the spine and then going for the bent over. You can do all three of them in one set if you choose to. And try to always in some way break a record. So let's say you go for 15 reps. You go 15 here, bent over 15 here, okay? Great. Maybe next set, try to go for 16. And then the following set, either 16 or 17. That's how you get broad shoulders. That's how you get strong, dense shoulders. And of course, the bench press helps out with that. And the back and the pull downs, all that helps out. But the dumbbell shoulder series, that's going to be something that will help you innately. Just a simple workout, that's what's going to help you the most when it comes to having broad shoulders, right? But of course, I know there are going to be some guys that usually ask me, oh, how do you get like big trapezius? You know, that's what they'll usually ask, right? Yeah, big shoulders, you got to have some mounts to kind of back that up, right? That's going to come a little bit more with the strength training side. So when it comes to building size, I guess we can get onto this topic. I wasn't going to talk about this actually, but I'm throwing 10,000 different things right here, which is good. Yeah. But this is good for you guys. You know, we're covering a lot. This is how much we can cover, and we're hardly scratching the surface. With what we can talk about with this, because I'm not even covering the science. I'm not even covering kinesiology. Well, I kind of am actually to a certain degree, because we're talking about insertion points and origins and levers and things like that. That's kind of the fun stuff, right? So we're getting into some stuff there, but I want to just be a little bit more direct and straight to the point. If you're trying to build size, understand the diet has to come into place, and hypertrophy and strength training are going to help out with that. Remember, hypertrophy training is going to include when the muscle itself, if we're including, I'm going to go off terminology again, I apologize ahead of advance, satellite cell activation. What that means, well, can you imagine if we have cells in our body and have like little satellites on them, things like that, you know? Satellite cell activation is extremely important because that's a component of helping out with hypertrophy training for the muscle, okay? We're going to talk about muscle protein synthesis as well, but understand that satellite cell activation is a component when it comes to muscle protein synthesis and when it comes to muscle growth, okay? And so we have all that, which is going to be the good stuff. So strength training and hypertrophy training will do that. What does hypertrophy training look like? Hypertrophy training is going to be a little bit more like 5 to 6 sets. And I think we were just talking about that earlier, like 60 to 67% max of what your predicted 1 rep max is. Resting periods are probably going to be from a minute to a minute and a half, okay? And most of the hypertrophy training is probably going to be slow repetition as well, okay? Now, what do I mean by slow repetition? The slower or the longer the elongation, the duration, I would say, of the eccentric portion, because remember, we have 3 of them. We have the eccentric portion, isometric portion, and the concentric portion. Eccentric portion is the portion that's going to allow longer time of lengthening and time under tension to the muscle. When you combine those components, that's what allows muscle growth to happen. More muscle growth, because it's stressed. The muscle is more stressed out. So it has to adapt with the soreness or DOMS, right, the delayed onset muscle soreness. It needs to go through that naturally for the muscle to adapt to the training. But that's where more size comes in, okay? The strength training, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit different because you're lifting higher weights, of course, as intensity, and you're training your body to produce higher rates of force at any given time and at any given speed, okay? And we'll get into power training in another video. I don't want to go too far off the rails here with like the generalized stuff, but this is still pretty generalized and such. So again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're trying to build size, okay? If we're going, let's say 3-1-1 or 3-1-2, if I'm bench pressing, the 3 is this: 1, 2, 3, and then 2 seconds if you want, or 1 second. 1 second is this: 1 second, and then a pause at the top for 1 second. 1, 2, 3. 1 second, 1 second pause, and then from there you go. Okay. Some people do 4 seconds.
So if you do it too fast, it's not good.
If you do it too fast, it's not going to go into that proponent of the muscle growth and size that you want, right? Because the whole point of the slow repetitions, it has to be conducive to you building muscle mass. The mass comes with the size. So when you're increasing in the whole cross-sectional area of the muscle, okay, the diameter, that's where the size is going to come on in. But in order for that to happen, you have to have an antagonistic component of the slow repetitions. Because when the muscle is under tension for too long, and let's say I'm doing an arm curl, and I'm doing it real slow like this, you're putting more tension on the bicep brachii and the bicep the brachioradialis muscle. So that's more tension and more lengthening, so that's putting more stress onto the muscle. Whereas if you're just doing this over and over again, yes, you're still stressing out the muscle, but you're not stressing it out to this type of degree. Hence, you're not activating the satellite cell activation when it comes to increasing in hyperplasia and increasing in in sarcoplasmic reticulum activity and sarcoplasia, things like that. All of that is conducive to helping all the growth to happen, right? And of course, the diet comes into play with the high protein and the creatine, things like that, which we could probably get to, maybe, or if not in another video. So that's where it is. The training has to be conducive to the goals. So if your goal is to do hypertrophy training, trying to gain size, okay, strength training, you'll gain size also, but if you're trying to just go for pure size and you're not too focused on, I guess, like the strength aspect, like you're trying to bench like 400, 500 pounds or whatever, then you can still gain size by getting 60 to 70% of 1RM, 10 to 12 reps. I've seen some studies actually some years ago where even just 10 reps under 60, almost 70%,
Yeah.
that will contribute to hypertrophy training. That will stimulate muscular hypertrophy.
I'm sure something will
Yeah.
help you out.
Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, it depends on how much work you're doing, and it depends on how much stress you're putting on it.
Right.
Like, the body has to feel a sort of stress. Like, and this isn't even workout-wise, right? Like, if the body, by nature, innately, experiences some sort of stress, whether it's mental stress, body stress, endocrine stress, whatever it is, there's a change that has to happen, a response. There has to be a response to combat it. And how do you combat it? Of course, when it comes to weight training, like if we're doing 10 reps of your 60, 70%, and you're sore as heck because you decided to do a 3-1-2 tempo, you best believe good proper resting throughout the week, proper nutrition, like you're getting the protein in, so it's triggering muscle protein synthesis, and then you have creatine as well to increase creatine retention, and it acts as an agonistic component to trigger higher effects of muscle protein synthesis. That's going to determine your recovery, and that's how the muscle and the body is going to adapt to future training. Resting is the biggest thing, guys. It's the biggest thing. If you're not recovering well, and what do I mean by that? Because there's overtraining. There's such thing as overtraining, right? What is considered overtraining? Okay, it's not just one thing. It's a plethora of different variables that play into overtraining. One of them, which I think is the most obvious one, is that you're just lifting too much. You're just lifting too much, and you're not giving yourself proper rest between sets, recovery rates. Your heart rate is too high. That's another indicator of your overtraining, is that you constantly have a high heart rate. Like you're constantly out of breath. Lack of sleep. You're malnutritious because it's affecting your appetite in an adverse way. You're taking too long to recover outside of DOMS. Remember, DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. So after a lift, you might not experience DOMS even after you finish lifting, like a few hours after you lift. Maybe not the next day, not even 2 days. You might feel it like on the third day, and it won't go away until like maybe another 3 days, somewhere around there. So that's something to bear in mind, guys. Like if you're brand new to working out, expect DOMS to happen. Expect delayed onset muscle soreness to happen because your body's new. If there's one thing I'd tell parents, because I have this relationship with parents back at my job and even kids and college athletes and pro athletes, if we're talking about brand new people who come into the gym, they are the ones always who are going to go through the highest amount of receptors when it comes to stress. they are the ones who are going to feel more sore. They are the ones who are going to go through DOMs a whole lot more. They're the ones who are going to take a longer time to recover,
Right.
most likely. But they are the ones also, if we're looking at this from a more positive notion, they are the ones who are going to see adaptations faster because it's brand new to them. The body doesn't know what to do, and the body has to adapt. It's forced to adapt. It just has to. Just like, again, going back to Neanderthals, Homo sapiens, when we were first spawned, Homo erectuses, we adapted. Their bodies adapted according to their environment and to the behaviorisms of what was going on between the interactions, the environment, the animals, they had to fight, all that stuff.
Right.
Neanderthals, they had a bunch of calluses on their feet. We talked about this because the terrain was just rough for them.
Right.
So in order for them to actually walk on rocky terrains, things like that, their skin naturally developed calluses permanently at that point.
I do them with people too.
Yeah.
But let me ask you something. I know somebody who does pull-ups every day. Like, he just does like 60 pull-ups every day. Every day.
Yikes.
When I try to do it with him, I tell him, like, yo, I need my rest days. I need to recover. What do you think of, like, this situation? Like, do you think he's doing it right? Or he does it every day, like, pull-ups all the time. No rest.
So that's actually another good question. So I'm going to tackle this question probably a multitude of ways. Number one, if we're looking at it from a more kinesiological standpoint, I think I just made that word up. If we're talking more from a
Sounded like a word. So.
it did sound like a word, right? You heard it first from the unplugging. Right. If we're tackling this from a kinesiology standpoint, or just exercise physiology standpoint, when we're working out, there are big muscle groups and there's small muscle groups. Big muscle groups take at least 2 to 3 days to recover. The smaller muscle groups take about a day, 24 hours. So 24 hours for the smaller muscle groups. That's why it's fine to do abs for the most part, almost every day, for the most part, but not too intense. Not too intense. Like, I do abs maybe like 1 or 2 ab workouts per day. But I work on different motions. Like, I'll do twisting in the transverse plane. I'll do more sagittal plane motions. I'll do more frontal plane motions. Like, I'll maybe do some deviations, things like that. Like, I call them the oblique drops. That's what I like to call them when I'm holding like a weight on one arm, things like that.
All right.
I'm changing the planes. The planes of motion, I'm always changing with my workouts. So even if I do, let's say, my upper abdominal wall to the mid wall, I'm doing crunches or whatnot, but then the next day I do more rotation. Now I'm still working the upper to mid torso, as they're going to be a little bit more on the synergistic side for the most part. Well, no, that's not true. They're still mostly primary, but they're still synergistic because I'm doing more of the oblique side. I'm working more transverse plane, things like that. Right. But the abdomen wall, for the most part, the whole wall will still be worked on primarily, I would say. Yeah, they'll still be worked primarily. And then you still have the synergistic muscle groups like the obliques and the lower back kind of helping out.
I think what he's doing is good. Like, doing pull-ups every day.
I would say it's
not effective.
It's not going to be effective. And I say this because, like, doing 60 pull-ups, I find that hard to believe.
What?
I kind of find that hard to believe that you're doing 60 pull-ups every single day. Like,
he doesn't.
Because the thing is that if you're doing, I would need to see this person first. Like, how tall is he? His whole anatomy, I would have to see. How big is he?
He's almost your height.
Almost my height. Okay.
Actually, he's an inch shorter than I am. But he's got pretty big arms. I'll say he's pretty fit-ish.
Yeah, even like I would consider myself pretty fit too, but I wouldn't do 60 pull-ups every single day because the thing is, again, like, you got to give your primary muscle groups at least 72 hours worth of rest, and then the smaller muscle groups you give 24 hours worth of rest, and then you can start doing things again. But
I was doing it with him, right?
Yeah.
And I noticed when I took a break, like a 3 or 4 day break, and then I went back to it, I noticed I can do more. Because I think I fully recovered, you know what I'm saying? But he tried to push me to do it every day too.
Is it one set only that he's doing? Only one set?
No, he does 3 sets.
3 sets of doing that.
5 sets. I don't even know what the fuck he does. He does a lot. But
so the volume is pretty high on those.
He does like 100, actually, not 60. But
100. Yeah, the volume's extremely high. Like, it's again, like, it's one of those things where it's like, And I would ask the question, why do you feel like you have to do 100 push-ups every single day?
Not push-ups, pull-ups.
I'm sorry, pull-ups. Yeah, pull-ups. What is the purpose of doing?
Get bigger, man. You know?
Yeah, but
arms and everything, back and all that. You know?
well, you see, this is where a lot of this stuff comes in, because if we do pull-ups are great. I'm not saying that pull-ups are not great.
No, pull-ups are great.
What I'm saying is that we're going over a little bit more generalization on just creating workouts, right? So if I were to do the same workout every single day, your body will cease to have certain stimuluses. Cease entirely. Like, can it still have some sort of effect in the long term for having some sort of hypertrophy effect? Yes, but it won't be as profound.
It's not optimal.
Yeah, it's not going to be optimal. And the key, and I'm glad you said it. The key
too. I was trying to tell him, but you know, he's still doing it.
The key word, and I'm glad Chris brought this up. The key word, I'm going to use this word a lot now that we're going to have our exercise science days and our sports nutrition days. Optimal. Your training and your diet has to be optimal. It has to be. Like, if you try to do way more than you should, it's not optimal. If you do less than you should, that's still not optimal. 1 hour is really all you need to spend in the gym. Heck, there are even times where 45 minutes is fine. I know plenty of guys, even competitors, they just train for like maybe 45 minutes and they're good. They're done. But they have a very organized block system where it's either they're doing conjugate, they're doing HIIT training, they're doing triphasic training. Like, there's a bunch of methods out there.
Right.
What side barbell? Hey. Oh yeah, they're great. They're great. But it's not optimal. So like, let's say it's the same thing as me saying that I'm doing barbell bench press every single day. Like, I'm not, like, I'm not going to recover well. Like, there's no way I can do 70%, 80%. Let's say, let's just take it to the extreme here.
Okay.
This is why the primary muscle groups need 72 hours worth of rest, because they're the ones that are mostly going to be exerting the highest amount of forces when it comes to the primary lifts, right? And the secondary muscle groups, yes, they're going to be contributing, but of course, they're the primary muscle groups for a reason, because they're the prime movers.
Right.
But even if you're doing secondary muscle groups, if you're doing like the smaller ones, like the abdomen wall, because the pecs, not the pecs, I'm sorry, we've got the frontal abdomen wall, which has either the 6-pack, the 4-pack, 8-pack, so all those are muscles themselves, right? Those are recovered, but you're gonna have to do some form of strength training with them no matter what. So doing like cables, weights, dumbbells, Bosu ball, even hanging leg raises, because gravity itself is resistance.
Right.
So you coming up, let's just talk about that for a moment. Why not? Even like one of the better abdomen workouts, and we'll make a future video of this. I'll just spoil it a little bit here. Anything that involves going against gravity, hence like the bench press and you just doing total body exercises, that's going to apply the most resistance. So if you're doing, like, let's say broad jumps, yes, gravity will push you down here and there because it has to, but you just doing like leg raises, going upwards, coming up, that's going to have more of a conducive effect towards getting the abdomen wall to fire up, because it's fighting upwards, it's fighting against gravity. So you're going to find the most effective abdomen exercise is just doing that, actually. I'm not saying that's the best workout. I'm just saying that's, for me, I would say, because if we're applying physics and just the body itself anatomically, hanging leg raises, just by itself, looking at it, that's one of the better workouts, because it's already fighting against not only the body itself with its weight, but gravity itself with resistance on that, right? The vector, the trajectory, basically, is what I'm talking about, right? So now that we talked a little bit about those, right? And back to just kind of the block training. So we just made a block right there. Now we go on to like another block, right? So we did the warm up, the core, the special lifts, and now we have special lifts number 2, or auxiliary lifts number 2, right? Tackle more of those secondary muscle groups in which you feel need work. So what needs work in the bench press? The triceps, the forearms, wrists, okay, like the muscles surrounding the wrists, chest, back, shoulders, anything that's antagonistic towards it. So anything on the back is going to help it. Wrist curls will help out. Traps. There's so many things that can help out with the bench press, whether if it's not a prime mover, it's a secondary, it's a synergist, anything. Anything that kind of just is going to be conducive towards the movement. Always work on those, guys. Always work on those. Always want to work on those weaknesses. If you feel that there's a certain weakness in a certain muscle group, personally, me, I would double down more. So if you have weak triceps, double down on triceps. So you can do one tricep workout on the first special exercise block, and then do another one right after that. And then also do forearm exercises, and you're good to go from there. So that's pretty much gonna wrap up for, I guess, the exercise portion. We went through a lot of stuff there, actually.
Right.
A whole bunch of stuff. So I do want to wrap up. Where are we at? Okay, so we're on good time here. I do want to wrap up now with nutrition, as a matter of fact. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. I'll definitely get in with the questions here and there. So Dr. Cervantes or anybody watching, definitely give me some questions here. I'll be more than happy to answer on everything. Oh, cardio. You know what? Let's talk about cardio. Oh, yeah. I kind of thought I was forgetting something here. Okay. I kind of want to start cardio off with this. Now, cardio has its advantages and it has its disadvantages, and weight training does too, right? Because with the weight training, it's focusing more on the phosphocreatine system. It's focusing a lot more on the glycolytic system, which are energy systems would help out with endurance, strength, endurance, and power, and strength and things like that, okay? But it doesn't have really a place when it comes to the oxidative systems, oxidation. So that's where the cardiovascular system kind of comes on in, okay? Now, idealistically, when we're talking about guys, women who focus on cardio, great, good for them. It's better than the alternative. Being at home doing absolutely nothing. Eating junk all day, okay? Yeah. That's already going to be a no-go right then and there, so do some cardio. The only thing when it comes to cardio is you got to understand, this is for everyone, again, who's new to the channel and new to this topic at hand, okay? You got to understand, we have types. We have muscle fiber types, okay? Type 2, and there's type 2A, type 2AB, type 2X, type 2ADX. Like there's a whole bunch of, there's a library of muscle fibers, and there's something that's called the size principle, okay? The way muscles contract, I'm gonna nerd out on you guys a little bit. The way muscles contract is that it has to start off from a type 1, and it goes all the way to the type 2X's, okay? Depending on the exertion of forces that are needed from the body. That's what the size principle is, okay? So kind of understanding that, good stretches. Siri loves to interrupt me. So kind of understanding that, we understand more type 2 fibers are going to be more of the muscular endurance fibers. To a degree, they could be oxidative. The less they are in the grade 2 area, they start to become more oxidative. But if we're talking more on like the higher grade 2s, like the A's and the AB's and the B types and the X's are like the higher types. Right. Now we're leaning more towards strength and power. But if we're talking about type 1s and type 1A and type 1AC and all that, those are more oxidative fibers, okay? Now, with the cardio aspect, what you guys got to understand too is that the fiber confusion, I don't think fiber confusion is, it's a terminology that's hardly used. It's basically like let's say you're doing cardio and you're doing weightlifting, which I do see. That's not an uncommon thing. We definitely see people doing cardio and weight training, that's fine. Yeah. That's totally fine. Nothing against people who do that. But again, it ultimately depends on your goal. Your goal. So if your goal is, I want to build muscle, you shouldn't really be prioritizing cardio. Because I think the mistake people make when it comes to goal setting is they conflate losing weight, gaining weight, putting on muscle mass, losing water weight. Like, you're putting too much together. You guys have to understand that when it comes to resistance training, cardio, weight loss, weight gain, it's one thing. It's not a whole bunch of things together like that. So if you're going to put on mass or build hypertrophy in the body, understand you're going to put on weight. Okay? So if someone comes up to me and tells me, here's a perfect example, and this is common. You're going to have guys coming up to me and be like, oh, I want to lose weight, but I want to put on muscle. That's the look I'm going to give you right there. It's like, okay, so you do realize we have two conflicting goals here, right? In order for you to lose weight, yes. But well, actually, that depends on the person.
I think they're, when they say that, what they mean is they just want to look fit, more fit, you know what I'm saying? Like, because muscle obviously weighs more than fat, you know, so if you to gain weight, maybe you want to get, muscular.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? Like, and that's good that you brought that up because, again, like, my another advice I can give you guys off rip is have a goal, have a plan. Well, the plan you kind of have to play a little bit with as you go, but have a goal. If it's weight loss, focus on weight loss. If it's weight gain, focus on weight gain. If it's gaining muscle, focus on that. But just understand there's a give and take. That's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. There's a give and take with everything. So if someone comes up to me again saying, well, I want to lose weight, but I want to put on muscle mass, here's what happens actually. If we follow a successful, conducive plan, what will happen is if we make a program where he's doing resistance training and his diet is good with helping him with recovery,
I think I know where you're going.
putting on the muscle, right? Great. Here's what happens. Dr. Cervantes, I'm gonna answer your question in just a moment here, okay? Or as I so the workout plan is good. The diet is good. Like you're getting enough protein, which again, I know you guys are probably wondering, okay, when are we gonna talk about protein? We'll probably talk about that in a future video, maybe next week or maybe Thursday.
Maybe.
And the rest is good. The DOMS is not there. Like there's so many things that play into that. You're going to put on lean body mass or LBM. I'll probably start using that acronym very soon. LBM, lean body mass. And at the same time, you're dropping body fat. That's a thing. This is the inverse relationship that happens. The inverse relationship is you put on muscle and you tend to lose body fat. That's mostly what happens. If we're talking about a good plan that's conducive to your goals. But if we're talking about losing weight, not exactly. That doesn't really happen like that. So if we're you can actually lose weight actually if you're putting on the muscle mass. I'll tell you how.
Yeah.
Because if you're burning weight, the fat mass that counts as weight. So if you're burning fat mass, that counts as you burning it.
Yeah, but you have to burn a lot.
The diet has to play a role in that. It has to.
I feel like a lot of people, when they do this, and they do this for like, let's say they start and they go to the gym, and maybe they're going on by like 2 or 3 months, and they're, working out, doing everything correctly, their diet is good, and they're weightlifting, all that shit, and they weigh themselves, and then they get dismotivated because they see that their weight's just like, higher or whatever, and they just don't feel it, they don't see it yet, and they're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's because the thing is they get demotivated because the goal setting is totally off.
Yeah.
So like I was saying before, like you can lose weight while you're putting on muscle mass. You can. But if you rely on the scale, that's a totally different story because it's not going to tell you, oh, you lost fat mass, but you gained lean body mass. It's not going to tell you that unless you do skin fold testing, DEXA scans, in-body analysis, water weighing. Like there's a lot of different methods that come into that.
That's why I don't weigh myself.
Yeah, but I'll come back to this topic in a moment, guys. Let's go ahead and answer this question here. How about working upper part of body every other day and alternate lower body part the other day? Yeah, absolutely. It's let's ask this question here. Or cardio one day and alternate with weightlifting the other day. Okay, so let's answer this in a bit of a two-pronged way here. Okay. So the first question here, Dr. Cervantes, we appreciate that. Yes, absolutely. That's a very common thing. Usually, I can give you a little bit of a reference from what I do. I do upper body twice a week. And I do lower body twice a week as well. And I try to incorporate abs almost every day. And I even have one day where it's just pure abs. Pure abs. Sometimes 2 days where it's just pure abs. Okay.
Wait, say that again? You do what? Twice a week? You do upper body?
Yeah. So if we're talking like, because the way I do it like it's a conjugate system. It's more of a conjugate split. So I do upper body twice a week, lower body twice a week.
Lower body. Okay, twice a week.
Yeah, and then I have one day where it's more towards abdominals, where it's just dedicated solely on abdomen wall, whether it's transversely, frontal plane, sagittal plane, all that stuff. It's just going to be dedicated just to the abdominals. But if you do that, if you're going to do that, you have to ensure that when you do that, abs are a little complicated. I'll tell you, because they're small muscle groups, and if you're going to do them every single day, which is definitely possible, like I said, don't do crunches every day. Don't do transverse plane every single day. Right. Don't do leg raises every single day, because eventually, like, you're gonna hit that wall. You're gonna plateau and just be like, oh, I can't even do it, because there's so much lactic acid buildup and hydrogen buildup in the muscle. Yeah, it's what causes muscle fatigue. I'm gonna debunk something for you guys really quick. What causes muscle fatigue is not lactic acid buildup. It's hydrogen ion buildup that causes fatigue. Yeah,
What the fuck is that for the reviewers?
it's a byproduct that's produced whenever muscle contractions occur, right? So when lactic acid is produced also as a byproduct when muscles contract. But here's where we start nerding out again. The lactic acid buildup, if we're gonna go, I believe, I haven't done this in a little while actually with like the Cori cycle and everything like that. It's not the Cori cycle, I believe. It's there's a system in the body, I totally forget what it was called. I'll definitely tell you guys about that maybe the next episode. But basically the lactic acid, it converts into glycogen or glucose in the body to fuel for more endurance training. So if you're doing muscular endurance or if you're doing strength training, anything like that, that lactic acid, it's stored in the muscle, but then you're using it in a cycle, I forget what it's called, and maybe it is the Cori cycle actually. And you're processing, you're allowing the lactic acid buildup, you're allowing the lactic acid to convert into glucose to more fuel, in the body, so you're using it to lift weights more for a longer period of time, right? Hence that glycolytic system we were kind of talking about a little bit. But the glycolytic system is going to be more on time, the duration of how long muscles in the body is being put into action. So it's more of the phosphocreatine or more phosphagen, that's what we would call it, where if you're doing like a power exercise, like if you're doing rowing, let's say, like a workout, and you're going like your hardest, the first 5 to 10 seconds, your body uses this energy system to be very powerful. And then when it goes past the 10 seconds, now the glycolytic system kicks in, where now the body relies not only on stored creatine, it relies more on stored glycogen in the muscle to help continue performing.
Stored glycogen.
Yes, stored
sugars, right?
Yeah, stored sugar in the body. Yeah, stored sugar, stored glucose. So any glucose that isn't used is stored as glycogen in the body. But this could be counterintuitive towards weight loss, because if you have stored glycogen in the body,
right,
and you're not using it at all for anything, hence you're sitting around all day, it's not being used for anything, something has to happen to it. Now it has to convert into something else.
If you're not using it.
If you're not using it. Yeah, it has to convert to something else, so it stores as fat.
So it can go back to fat.
Yeah, it converts now into fat, which is what you don't want.
So it stores it okay, so let me get this straight. You eat sugar or carbs or whatever, turns to glucose, and goes to your muscles, but if you don't use it for a certain period of time, it goes back to fat.
It converts into triglycerides. It'll convert into triglycerides, which is like the broken down fat storage, but it converts into fat at the very end of the day. Yeah, that's fat. That's what you don't want. Hence eating Oreos all the time, sugars, candy, ice cream.
Right.
Like imagine me, like I have my ice cream days. You know how I go to Cold Stone sometimes? I have my cheat days too, guys, okay? I go to Cold Stone and I have that freaking brownie confection from Dairy Queen or Cold Stones. I have that. I forget that one thing that I call it, right? Or that they call it, I forget. It's like, it's so yummy. Oh my goodness.
Delicious.
The next day, I go straight to the gym and boy, do I feel like breaking records when I go pre-fueled after all that. And even
what's the time period between, like, how long can you have the glucose in your muscle before it turns into fat? How long would you say?
That's a good question, actually. I will definitely get back to you on that one.
Okay. No
but if you were, but what I will tell you, here's what I will tell you: pre-fueling. What professional athletes do, at least like the athletes who are into like triathlons and things like that. Dr. Cervantes, I didn't forget about you, okay? I know you have another question there, but let me finish answering this one and then we'll go from there. If we're dealing with like triathlons, a lot of them pre-fuel even days before.
Oh, I know. They load up on carbs like crazy.
Oh yeah.
Ramen noodles and all that shit. I've heard about these marathon runners that do this stuff because I want to get into marathon running.
Videos. Yeah.
Alright. But yeah, I mean,
bit of a timeout here from you guys. Give me a moment.
Yeah, to answer this guy's question, Dr. Cervantes, yeah, every other day, I would say, yeah, that's fine. Or cardio one day, but you can throw in some cardio, some walking, some stairmaster, something.
To finish answering you, Chris, the triathlons, yeah, they do it days before, and even if you're doing regular weightlifting, preload in carbs like maybe 60 to maybe 70 grams of carbohydrates 1 hour before you work out, whether it's cardio, whether it's weightlifting, that should fuel you 1 hour before. And then after an hour passes, 1 gram per minute of carbs. Absolutely. So now, Dr. Cervantes, back to you now. So, or cardio one day and alternate with weightlifting. That's fine. That's totally fine. Because, again, if your goal is to gain size, gain muscle, be strong, and actually produce high amounts of concrete force, you can't be prioritizing cardio. You just can't. Because, again, we briefly explained the fiber confusion. If your body is mainly type 1 from the training, you're not going to produce high grades of force. You're not going to. So you're just not going to perform well when it comes to resistance training. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for sure. But if your goal is weight loss, purely weight loss, let's touch upon this really quick actually for weight loss, because I think a big mistake many people make when they finish weight training and they get their size. I even made this mistake a long time ago, where if I gain all the muscle and have my phases where it's like, okay, it's summertime, like I want to lose weight so I can look shredded and have a beach body, whatever. And then when it's fall season and going into spring, I'm going to do more bulking and things like that. Here's where many people make a mistake. Ladies and gentlemen, when you are done entirely with your bulking phase or whatnot, okay? And for those who are new to this terminology, bulking, like you're putting on size, okay? You're putting on size, you're putting on musculature for your body. We're trying to get everything. And even people who are overweight, they're not overweight, but they're just like, they have a belly or something like that. Maybe they're just a bit out of shape.
It's very common.
Yeah. I think our obesity rate is like almost touching 70% now. Almost. It's like 60, it's like in the high 60s now, I think.
Yeah, we're one of the fattest countries in the world.
Oh, if we're going to talk like politics really quick, it's mostly because of just all the exports that we end up getting from all the different countries and just
foods, ingredients, all that stuff.
We're not a purely agricultural country.
Hear that, like, all right, a lot of the stuff that we have here, we have a bunch of ingredients that we don't even need, and they ban that shit in Europe and all that kind of stuff.
Rightfully so.
But in America, it's allowed.
Yeah, because the thing is that we're not really an agriculture.
We're more addictive and shit, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like America basically destroys itself by.
There's YouTube videos where it shows like comparisons of Oreos, of all these other foods that have like added like seed oils and this and that and stuff they don't need.
Oh yeah, like, and a lot of just preservatives, lots of bad preservatives, lots of toxins and metals that they put in like certain foods and things like that. Even some of the vegetables in which are grown here are grown with like super dirty water. Like it's bad, really, really bad. And yeah, I was gonna say that the pesticides that they throw in, like we're not truly an agriculturistic country, unfortunately. We're just not, and hence you can also see where like the money grabbing is coming from McDonald's and Burger King and all these fast food restaurants. You know, believe that. That's why going to Peru is so amazing. When I went to Peru one time, with one of my exes, the food there was so awesome, man. Oh, the potatoes and the chicken and the salads, like, I'm gonna go there on vacation. You and I should go one of these days. Just absolutely. But yeah, so Dr. Cervantes, I hope that answers your question. Like, if you're gonna do cardio, don't prioritize it. Not entirely. Focus mainly on weight training. And the thing is, we were talking about something actually. We were talking about the changing phases. If you guys are going to change from bulking to leaning out and cutting, do not drop your protein intake. Do not drop your creatine intake. Do not drop any of those, because what you have to understand is if you're going to drop certain principles and certain variables when it comes to weight training, all those variables that are actually agonistic towards muscle gain and everything like that, you have to preserve your body. You have to preserve muscle. How do you do it? Amino acids, protein shakes, creatine, okay? We have many studies right now, which I don't have on hand, but I will, don't you worry. Unplugging is about studies, okay? Keeping creatine retention is good in your body, okay? There's this whole thing, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but creatine doesn't add water to your body. It relocates water, basically. So it disperses water more from different areas and puts them more into the muscle to help it with recovery, to help it with performance, and help it with hyperhydration, okay? That's what it does. So this whole thing about like, you put creatine in and you're just putting on more water in your body, you're going to put more weight on in the body. No. There's no science that really proves that. There really isn't. And there's this whole thing about like creatine also with hair loss. There's no study right now. Actually, I know you brought that up. I spoke to somebody in this past conference about a few weeks ago, the one that I told you about. A scientist told me, and he's called as the creatine guy, actually. Scott Forbes, look him up. He's a nice guy. He told me, and I asked him, is it true, coming from Mr. Creatine guy, he said there's a study being done right now as we speak, I think in Germany right now, if creatine truly adds as a proponent for hair loss.
Man, from my experience, I noticed my hair falling when I started taking creatine.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, it stopped. I was like,
See, but that's the thing too. Like, it's if we don't have like real research on that, and we're kind of going off anecdotes, that's kind of one thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. But like, this is what happened to me, and then I searched it up, and I heard other people say the same thing. I'm like, oh damn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just we can easily go with like a high amount of empiricals and the anecdotes and such, but I'm looking forward for that study. And just one study.
It could be, it just could be, maybe I was working out a lot harder and my testosterone was a lot higher, and that could have been it too, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Were you really stressed during that time period as well? Because stress is also a component for hair loss as well.
Well, yeah.
For some people, not everybody.
It's a different thing, but there's certain hairs that you have on top of your head that has like a DHT receptors, you know?
Yeah.
They're sensitive to DHT, which is testosterone turned into a different molecule or whatever. But the thing is, like, yeah, if you're gonna be working out, you know, you're gonna have higher testosterone, and it could be a correlation with that. You know what I'm saying?
Possibly. Yeah, we'll wait for the study to come on now. There's a lot
I
of
notice it, you know.
nice. Okay, yeah. Well, let's hope no more hair loss there. we like the hair on top of our heads here. So yes. So continuing on with this, right? So if you're gonna lose weight and such, do not drop your protein intake. Do not drop your creatine intake, because the goal now at this point. The goal should be, obviously you're trying to lose weight, I get that. But on top of that, as a secondary goal, is to not lose all your muscle mass. Now, are you going to lose some strength, some muscle mass? Yes, but the goal is to not lose so much of it. Like, I would rather lose like 2% versus 25%. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I got a question for you. How fast do you lose muscle mass if you stop working out?
that's another good question, actually. Personally, I'll answer that question anecdotally.
Yeah, anecdotally fine.
Yeah, anecdotally. So when it comes to loss of strength, at least with a performance, it can happen. Actually, no, that's not true. Actually, no. So I did read a study not too long ago. Actually, it's actually in one of my books that I've read by Cal Diaz. Actually, Triphasic Training.
Okay.
You can do well to preserve, and this again, Chris is asking the questions here. Look at that, and as well as Dr. Cervantes.
So reviewers not asking any questions?
No, this is good. This is good. So that's an excellent question. So it's a study. I think I don't think it was. Yeah, it was kind of a study that I read from the book of Triphasic Training, and it said something about how you can keep performance when it comes to contractile forces within the muscle within about 30 days.
30 days.
30 days or about 40 days, somewhere around there. I need to look at the book again, but from what I read, this is like
With no workout, like maintaining.
something like that. Yeah. And then that's when you're going to start seeing decrements when it comes to muscular performance. Now, it's not a big decrement. I'm not talking about like, oh, you just lost 10%, anything like that. That's too exaggerated. We're talking about maybe like,
Days, you're safe. Kinda.
yeah, you're safe for about 30 to 40 days. And I can confirm that next time, if anything, but I'm pretty sure it's within 30 to 40 days. There's not going to be this big drastic change that happens. Now, for you guys who like to go on vacations and trips, and you like to go on your break, okay, all right, that doesn't mean that you just say, okay, I'm going to work out for 1 week, so I'm not going to work out for a whole entire month. Yeah, that's not how it works. It's not how it works. Like, you got to build the foundation. You got to build your castle. You got to build the pyramid. Like, all of this has to be built, and then you have to preserve it, okay? Like, a person who's super skinny, out of shape, and appendages are totally out of whack, super skinny, and then the guy, like, you flick him and he goes flying because there's no density going on there, right? You cannot excuse yourself not going to the gym for a whole month when you've got nothing. You have no frame,
Right.
nothing to work with. It doesn't work like that. Like, you have to constantly stimulate the body. You have to constantly stress it. You have to constantly give it new stimuluses. That is how you get muscular hypertrophy to happen. You gain it back real quick. See, here's, now that you brought that up, Dr. Cervantes, that statement he just made just reminded me of something.
Remind me of something too.
Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to go first with this?
I mean, I from experience noticed that when I went on vacation for like 2 weeks or something like that, and I was doing pull-ups. I'm gonna go back to
We're on the pull-up guy here.
I like pull-ups. Anyways,
I like him too. Yeah.
I noticed that after 2 weeks, like I wasn't as strong as I was before. You know, I kind of lost it, but I got back to it a lot faster than the first time when I went from 0 pull-ups to like 10 or something.
Right.
I recovered a lot faster. Like I think what you meant, like you have to build a foundation first. Like if you did it before, you can recover faster or get to your, what do you call it when you're like your top, like max.
Your 1 rep max.
Yeah, whatever your max reps or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, because see me, like I've been lifting for over 20 years now at this point, you know. So me taking 1 month, and I'm not even gonna push my luck with this. Let's say 2 months. I can probably still bench close to 400 pounds at that point. Like I might go from 395 to, if I take a whole month off, to, yeah, let's just keep it a month. I might drop from 395 to maybe 385 or 390 possibly. But when I re-stimulate my body with strength training,
Right.
and like protein and everything like that, and I go back to my good habits, that comes back almost no problem. I don't have empirical data on this, on like how fast it can just come back. But like you and I are talking about, I don't even think you need research for this. Like if you have a foundation, like muscle degradation at that point on, especially when your testosterone levels are naturally high,
Right.
that doesn't just go away like that. It really doesn't. But the thing that Dr. Cervantes reminded me of is, ladies and gentlemen, I want to debunk this right now. There's no such thing as muscle memory. No such thing. Like, there really is no such thing. I want to tell you why there's no such thing. Like, yes, I understand you remember that you benched 400 pounds. You remember from the brain that you squatted 600 pounds. Great. But then years pass, you don't work out, but muscle memory kicks in, and it's like, okay, well, I remember that I benched 400 pounds, but it's been like 10 years since I bench press.
That's different, yeah. That's a long time.
So you're going to tell your pets, hey, remember that we were pressing 400 pounds, remember? I remember. Okay. Even if it doesn't remember, it's not going to do it.
Yeah.
It's not going to lift it. Like, you got to understand, central nervous system activation is a huge thing. There's concentric pathways, there's eccentric neural pathways, and there's isometric neural pathways, okay? You have to be able to stimulate all of that, and on top of that, the hyperplasia has to be there. The sarcoplasmic reticulum has to be adequate in order for you to do adequate amounts of contractions in the body. That's responsible. You need calcium for that as well. There's so much that goes into just producing adequate amounts of force that you're going to be able to lift a certain amount of weight within a certain amount of time. But you not going for 10 years straight, and just because you remember that you did it, come on, guys, like that's not a thing. It's just not a thing. Like if you want an injury, you want your body to remember something. Try doing 400 pounds 10 years later. You haven't lived in 10 years. The body, here's what the body will remember: an injury. That's what it's going to remember. It'll never forgive you for that. I'll tell you that for now. So there's no such thing as muscle memory, guys. I know I had a little fun kind of explaining that, but no, like, if you have the foundation, kind of like what we're talking about, and you're constantly adding load, stress, you're changing the intensity, changing the stimuluses, you're constantly changing the variations of the workouts. Like if I do a bench press, regular bench press, then next week I do incline, next week I do decline, next week I go back to regular bench pressing, but then I have like these fat grips that increase the diameter of my grip. So now my forearm muscles are going to be activated more. Like, see what I mean? Like there's so much creativity that goes on with weightlifting. It's unfathomable. Like it's unfathomable of how many possibilities we can play around with all this. And if you guys want an episode on and how we can create a workout program more effectively, like I can put an Excel sheet and just put all the workouts in and explain everything from head to toe, I can totally do that. That's totally fine. The Unplugging has absolutely no problem doing that.
Yeah, those are the comments.
So that kind of wraps that up there. And yeah, we can kind of go really quick with the nutrition aspect, then we can wrap up here. So Moving forward with the nutrition aspect, guys, again, I'm not going to show like research studies for now. I'm going to be very general about this. You will see more research articles, peer-reviewed studies in the future, okay? I just want this to kind of go off more generalized, and even though we still touched on science and we still touched on some exercise science and physiology and kinesiology, that was fun. See, this is my first love, you know, I can always talk about this, no problem. That's always fun.
Okay.
But when it comes to nutrition aspect, again, like, very, very simple here. Like, if you're going to lose weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit. I highly advise everybody to use the app called MyFitnessPal. Under Armour owns that now, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've used that app a couple times.
I've used the app for like, I think 5 or 6 years, to be honest with you. I stopped using it because
You already know. You already have the knowledge of what you're eating and stuff like that. I stopped using it too because I eat the same shit every day. So it's like, I already know what I'm doing. So it's
yeah,
like, you know.
yeah, you just know. You absolutely know. So
It's good for people to gain like knowledge and to learn. Like maybe I shouldn't eat this, I shouldn't eat that because it's filled with calories, filled with carbs, or something. Like that. For people that don't know, it's really good.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, and it'll tell you right off the bat how many calories like a serving is going to be.
Yeah.
The best part about MyFitnessPal, I think it uses this algorithm. It's called the Harris-Benedict formula. So what that is that it's going to take into account your age, your height, your activity level, how much you weigh. I think I said height already, something around there, right. And your goals, like what are your goals? So you're trying to lose weight, gain weight, and then it spits out a formula or numbers and calories on how many calories you should be ingesting throughout the day. So that way you're kind of going on with the weight loss or the weight gain. The only thing I don't like about it is that it doesn't tell, it's never going to tell you, well, not now, maybe in the future possibly, or it'll probably talk a little bit more about how much muscle you're gaining average if you're doing weight training, things like that, even though it's better to do it with a DEXA scan.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah.
But you know what? With smartphones, like we might have like a little finger scan, where because they have those type of things. You do a finger scan, and it might be able to detect how much like muscle mass you have, things like that. Who knows? Something like that. That'll be nice. That'll be kind of nice. You know, that'll be really nice. So use that, guys. Like it's okay to use apps. But the other thing I will tell you guys also, and like I mentioned, like I have cheat meals too. Okay, like sometimes throughout the weekend, I'll have a cheat meal. Like, I'll tell you something, Chris and I, what we religiously do, okay, with our friend group and other people. We go to this place called Fuddruckers, and we have a 1 pound burger. And some of us like to have fries with it. We like to have like a shake with it, or maybe some other condiments to go along with it. Oh yeah, we go hard when it comes to cheating. But one time. Now we don't have like a cheat day.
Right.
We have a cheat meal.
Well, I got a treat day. But maybe I should cut it down.
Speaking of that, actually, so Albert, he gave me this idea. It was his idea, actually. After SuperCon this weekend, he wants to go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
How about it?
Yeah, we can go to. Is there an option? Is there an option where they have like bottomless wings or anything like that?
Bottomless wing for that place?
Yeah, for that place, Buffalo Wild Wings.
I don't think so. We're gonna find out.
Damn. All right, we'll find out from there. So it's like I said, guys, it's totally okay for you guys to have these cheat meals. It's totally fine. But hear me out on this one when it comes to eating certain things too, right? If you're one of those people that you just naturally have like this big, gigantic sweet tooth. I good night, Dr. Cervantes. Appreciate you with the questions and you joining us once again here. If you're a person who has a big sweet tooth, oh yeah, I know so many people that have the sweet tooth. Oh yeah.
Everybody likes carbs, man.
Yeah, because the added sugars and preservatives, they make everything taste good.
Right.
They do. Like, we can't stay away from stuff. Carbs make everything taste good.
No, what is that thing they put on everything that makes it taste better? It's like a salt. I don't know what it is. I want to say SMG, but it's not SMG. It's whatever. I don't know. Never mind. But they put the shit on everything that makes it taste better.
SMGs? Oh, you're talking about the gun? SMG?
Oh.
MSG.
MSG, there you go.
Yeah, MSG. we throw them guns on there, boys. Throwing them guns.
MSG, there it is, yeah.
Yeah, but and even some foods, we're gonna have LC. Thanks for joining us. Butter on a lot of foods, you know, even like the fast foods, they always like to do that. And so, see you Thursday, my man. Have a good night. The butter they'll throw on certain foods, like even in restaurants, right? Like, you always wonder why things taste so good. A lot of the guys will say, "Oh, it's butter. It's the butter we throw on shit.
Yeah.
It's the butter we throw on stuff, you know." So, that's basically what it is there, right? And then the high sodium intake, and the high salts that they throw on and all the foods, like that's what also makes things taste hella good. You know what I mean?
I put that salt in everything.
Hella good. But if we're talking about cheat meals here, right? Or not cheat meals. Let's talk about how you guys can get on. Let me see here. LC, Chick-fil-A, Butters, their buns makes it. Yeah, of course, absolutely. Oh, you know what? Speaking of Chick-fil-A,
Yeah.
so I had an ex who worked at Chick-fil-A, and I think it's a peanut butter oil that they use to help fry the fries.
Peanut butter oil.
Yeah, peanut butter oil. That's what she told me that. I was like, oh, so that's what makes it taste good. It's like, yeah, we use peanut butter oil. It's like,
I don't know about that.
that's
It's unhealthy as fuck.
it probably is for all we know, but man, does it taste good? Let me tell you, goddamn. Man, does it taste good?
But you know what though? From eating healthy for so long, and then like eating at a fast food restaurant, it just makes me feel sick, dude. I feel sick.
I can't eat fast food all the time. See, I'll tell you guys
I feel terrible. I used to eat fast food all the time. I thought I was fine, but I didn't know I wasn't fine.
No, we don't know better that time.
Yeah, exactly. So like quit eating fast food for like 2 weeks, and then I ate fast food, and I'm just like, ugh, this is gross. This is bad.
Yeah,
it's not healthy, man.
No, it's terrible. And I think also when we're kids, when we're younger, our digestive tracts,
A lot better.
yeah, they're sensitive. They're more sensitive, and they're more open to kind of just accept certain things because we're more moldable when we're kids, right?
Right.
But even then, like, and then that's also the period when you can introduce certain foods like dairy products, caffeine, all those things that a lot of people, when they get older, can't tolerate later on because their enzyme activity is not there anymore, or they just don't have the enzymes, period, that have the proclivity to want to break these things down. Because if you don't have certain enzymes, and if you don't have the lactose enzyme that breaks down lactose, that's where we start getting the bloating. That's where we start getting the discomforts and going to the bathroom and things like that.
Yeah.
So if we're able to develop those types of enzymes early on, that we'll be better off with the availability and the options we have for foods. But when you get older, like us, right, like, well, I told you that story. Like, I remember this one time I was with one of my exes, and I'm a milk person. I was, at least. Like, I drank chocolate milk all the time. But then it got to a point. This is a few years ago. I drank chocolate milk, and I was starting getting this like super discomforting feeling in the stomach. It's, oh my goodness. And then when I stopped drinking chocolate milk, it all went away. And then I experimented with myself again. I said, okay, you know what? Let me try it again. Boy, it happened like that in a heartbeat. No, I'm never drinking milk again.
Lost it.
But I can still have ice cream. I can still, like, other dairy products that's not purely milk, I can have. So I can.
That happened with me with caffeine. You know, I used to drink caffeine like coffee and iced coffee and all that stuff. And then suddenly out of nowhere, I had coffee and I had to use the restroom like really bad. And I was like, shit, like I'm getting older, like what's going on? Like this never happened before, you know? And then every time after that, every time I drink coffee or iced coffee or whatever, I have to go. Like I have to go.
Yeah, because with caffeine's more complex simply because if we're talking now about exercise physiology now or just genes in general, people have inheritance with certain genes as well with food breakdown. There's a caffeine gene, there's a lactose gene, like there's a whole bunch of genes. And even if you dive down deeper into exercise physiology, with exercising there's a strength gene, there's a power gene, a speed gene. Like there's so many genes now. I don't know if we have the technology yet to be able to read what type of genes people have when it comes to strength and conditioning.
Right, we'll figure it out one day.
But it's coming. Yeah. I can tell you right now that's going to be a thing in the future. Like that's going to be breakthrough science, and that's going to make programming so much better for people.
Yeah.
But regarding like with the genes and things like that, and you probably just maybe you were responding well to it at first, and maybe you just became a non-responder to a certain degree. Yeah. Yeah, some people are just definitely built differently. Absolutely. Yeah, and hence the genes we were talking about, right? Like different genes are going to definitely be agonistic towards the foods you're eating and your performance. But back to what we were talking about with like if you guys have like a sweet tooth, here's what I recommend, okay? When I was doing weight loss, right, here's what I did. I can plead myself guilty on this one, actually. I would say I have a bit of a sweet tooth myself. I like dark chocolate. I like sweets here and there. But here's how I continued still having sweets to a certain degree while still losing weight. What I used to do is I would get whipped cream. Okay, it's low, very low in sugar. It's like 5 calories per serving, somewhere around there, right? And it still tastes good. So what I would like shake it up and go, you know, and instantly it kills my craving for sugar. And then what I'll also do, I would get like this bag from Costco of like dark chocolate chips and just have like a small handful, barely any calories, barely any sugar, and I would consume it. Also kill my cravings. The key here is, if you have a sweet tooth, you have to find a way. If you're sticking to your diet, you have to combat the cravings.
Yeah.
So combating it by having something very subtle, like a nuance, a bit of a nuance of a treat, something small that doesn't have a lot of sugar, doesn't have a lot of calories, like the whipped cream I was mentioning, and like little dark chocolate chips, not so many, just like a small handful, eat it, you're golden. You should be good to go from there. Because again, it's to kill cravings. Every time I do that, I'm good. I'm good. I go back to whatever it was I was doing, whether it's setting up the podcast, reading, working out, going out, networking with people, and I don't think about going to Dairy Queen or anything like that. And let's see, small substitutes go a long way for long-term sustainability. And of course, yeah, for sustainable weight loss, of course, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. And this is kind of going back, LC, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we talked a little bit about when it comes to weight loss and what you need to start doing with like certain foods and things like that, right? So we talked about the cheat meals and things like that, like the diet. This is what we talked about. We talked about how diet is a bit of an ostracized word. Like people just don't like using that word. I'm fine with using that word, quite frankly, but the ostracization is real.
People laugh. I'm like, oh, you know, like, what's so funny about it?
Oh, you want me to go on a diet? Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, you and be like, why? Why are you in a diet? Why? You know, it's like, yo, I just don't want to eat all this food. You know, like, I don't want to get fat.
But that's just the truth, because if you're looking definition-wise, like diet, it also will just mean that you're restricting certain foods from your diet. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But you gotta do it. You just gotta do it.
Right.
But to like a subtlety, you can definitely get away with. Listen, like if I go home right now, let's say, and I have a bit of a sugar craving, and I have like this tub of ice cream, and I get just one spoon, and I scoop it, and I go, I'm good. I'm not gonna get fat off doing that.
Right. But the problem is, I think everybody has to start when it comes to grocery shopping. You know, just don't buy that stuff.
Yeah.
Because they can't control themselves. When you have it in your house, and it's just right there. You have a bag of chips. You have like your ice cream or whatever. You know, you're gonna go and grab it when you're feeling at your weakest. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just better not to buy that shit. That's why my fridge is empty. People make fun of me all the time.
So I still make fun of you a little bit, kind of. Where it's like, bro, like, what is this? There's nothing in here.
Bro, are you poor? Like, come on, bro. No, I cannot have food.
So, bro, you want me to bring a bag of chips next time, man? You know?
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't have that shit around the house, or else I'm gonna eat it. Like,
yeah. And you see, this is again where it goes back to just hard wiring when it comes to human psychology. Like, by nature, we're going to take the path of least resistance. The brain itself the body even doesn't want to get out of its comfort zone. We naturally fight to not get out of our comfort zone. But when life gets to us and stress, and then if you have girlfriends and boyfriends that are like, okay, well, you know, if you don't get your butt going, then I might break up with you. You know what I mean? Like, oh, now you gotta get out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Like, naturally, people get out of their comfort zone when they're forced to get out of their comfort zone, which is unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is, you know? So, kind of going with the diet and such, like, yeah, like, go on a diet if you need to, but the diet also doesn't mean, in my personal experience, doesn't mean that you have to cut certain things out entirely. Like, limit the volume, limit the quantity, limit the consumption, limit all of that, so that way you guys are still sticking straight forward down this path a straight, probably complicated path to weight loss or weight gain, anything like that. Okay, so I kind of want to wrap up on that pretty much. I kind of want to wrap up on that point, guys. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. This is episode number 12. Time to get in shape, guys. It is definitely time to get in shape. Stop making excuses. Stop sitting around. Stop playing video games all day. Stop doing drugs. Like, just enough. Just don't do it. It's just not worth it. Like, you're not. And this is an LC, just like if you weren't here at the beginning, we pulled up studies, like rewind if you need to, we pulled up studies on what both sexes look for when it comes to physical attraction, okay? Like men look for reproductive signs of fertility, but how do we look for that? Waist ratio, okay? Like it was the waist to hip ratio. How do women look for men who are gonna give them security and protection? Shoulder to hip ratio. All right. So we want different things, but the formidability that women look for in men, that's what they look for. And the fertility features by the looks also placates into that as well. All right. So look back on that if you need to and such, just so you have a little bit more context of why we're kind of at this point of talking about the fitness industry and things like that, right? And some science. Fun episode, guys. Totally a fun episode.
Yeah, a little different, which is good.
Very different. Moving forward, I do plan on having Tuesdays to be more dedicated towards working out and nutrition and maybe a little bit talk on the politics of the industry, fitness industry. And then Thursdays can be a continuation on relationships. And eventually, moving forward, maybe we'll start talking about real estate a little bit. We'll start talking a little bit more politics, maybe on that one as such. But definitely, I want us to ease in to certain topics here, so that way we kind of establish an identity here, okay? Yep. So this is pretty much it, guys. Episode number 12. It is time to get in shape. This is Leo and Chris from the Unplugging, signing out.
All right, see you guys.